Sarah Chen stared at the anomaly on her mother's weather radar for the third time that morning. At 13, she had spent enough time at the Stolberg Climate Research Station to know when something wasn't right. The blip shouldn't have been there. A perfectly circular distortion hovering at the edge of the station's scanning range, invisible to every instrument except the old meteorological radar her mother had modified last summer. "Mom," she called out, her breath fogging in the crisp air of the monitoring room. "I think you should see this." Dr. Lisa Chen didn't look up from her core samples. "If it's another polar bear on the perimeter, the automated systems will handle it." "It's not a bear." Sarah zoomed in on the display. "It's singing." That got her mother's attention. Dr. Chen set down her samples and crossed the room, her heavy Arctic boots clunking against the metal floor. She leaned over Sarah's shoulder, squinting at the readout. The anomaly pulsed with a regular rhythm, emitting frequencies that the radar converted into an eerie whale-like song. "That's impossible," Dr. Chen muttered, typing commands into the console. "We're picking up frequencies that shouldn't exist in nature." She reached for the station's comm unit. "I should alert the Norwegian authorities." "Wait." Sarah grabbed her mother's arm. "Look at the pattern. It's not random." She pointed to the oscillating waves. "It's a sequence. Prime numbers. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. Over and over." Dr. Chen froze, her hand hovering over the comm unit. "An intelligent signal. Has to be." Sarah was already pulling up her parka. "And it's only 3 kilometers from the station." "Absolutely not," her mother said, reading her daughter's expression. "We need to wait for the authorities." "Mom, it's -40 out there with a storm coming. By the time anyone gets here from Longyearbyen, whatever's causing this could be buried under 3 meters of snow." Sarah zipped up her parka and grabbed her emergency pack. Standard equipment for anyone venturing outside the station. "I've done this trek 100 times. Not alone, and not toward an unknown signal that shouldn't exist." "Then come with me." Sarah held out her mother's parka. "You always say the best scientists trust their instincts. What are yours telling you?" 20 minutes later, mother and daughter trudged through the Arctic twilight, following the signal's steady pulse on their handheld tracker. The wind had picked up, driving sharp needles of snow into any exposed skin. Sarah kept her eyes fixed on the tracker's display, watching the numbers tick down as they approached the anomaly's location. 500 meters, she called over the wind. "It should be just over this ridge." They crested the snow-covered hill, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Below them, partially exposed by recent thermal erosion, was a curved metal surface that definitely hadn't been made on Earth. Its dark hull absorbed the dim Arctic light, making it look like a hole cut into the landscape. Geometric patterns traced across its surface in lines of dull copper, forming complex circuits that disappeared beneath the ice. "Mom." Sarah's voice quavered. "Are we going to pretend this is a weather balloon?" Dr. Chen pulled out her phone and started recording. "No, honey. I think we're about to rewrite history." She paused, frowning at the object. "But why is it signaling now, after being buried for who knows how long?" Sarah took a careful step closer, her boots crunching in the snow. The signal's pitch changed, becoming more intense. The copper lines on the hull began to glow with a faint inner light. "I don't think it's signaling," Sarah said, her scientific curiosity overwhelming her fear. "I think it's responding. To us." As if confirming her theory, a section of the hull rippled like liquid metal. A seam appeared, widening into an aperture large enough for a person to enter. Warm air rushed out, carrying the scent of ozone and something else. Something alien. "Sarah, step back," Dr. Chen warned, but her daughter was already moving forward, drawn by an irresistible urge to understand. The interior was illuminated by the same copper-colored light that traced the hull. The walls were covered in what looked like writing. Not the angular alien scripts of science fiction, but flowing curves that reminded Sarah of the mathematical concept of strange attractors. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her voice echoing in the chamber. A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the room, projecting a three-dimensional map of the solar system. But something was wrong. The planets were aligned differently, and there was an extra world between Mars and Jupiter where the asteroid belt should have been. "This is old," Dr. Chen breathed, stepping into the chamber behind her daughter. "Very old." The hologram shifted, showing Earth from orbit. Red dots began appearing across the planet's surface. Dozens, then hundreds. Sarah realized with a start that they were looking at other installations like this one, all buried and waiting. But waiting for what? She wondered aloud. The answer came in the form of a new hologram, a massive fleet of ships approaching the solar system. The image zoomed in on one of the vessels, revealing its organic, almost predatory design. This wasn't first contact. It was a warning. A new symbol appeared in the air before them, a simple circle containing a spiral pattern. As Sarah stared at it, information began flooding into her mind. She gasped, staggering under the weight of the knowledge being transmitted directly into her consciousness. "Sarah," her mother caught her before she could fall. "What's happening?" "It's okay," Sarah managed, though her head was spinning. "It's showing me everything. What it is, why it's here." She looked up at her mother with wide eyes. "Mom, this isn't just a satellite or a ship. It's part of a defense network, built by a civilization that died out millions of years ago. And it's been waiting all this time for someone to find it." "Why?" "Because they're coming back." Sarah turned to watch the hologram of the approaching fleet. "The ones who destroyed that civilization. And Earth is next on their list." The chamber hummed with increasing energy as more systems came online, awakening from their millennia-long slumber. In that moment, Sarah understood why the installation had chosen to reveal itself to them, not to the world's governments or military powers, but to a curious girl and her scientist mother at the top of the world. Because sometimes the best defenders aren't the ones with the most power, but the ones with the most to learn. And humanity had a lot of learning to do before the enemy arrived. The Norwegian military arrived within hours, but Sarah knew they were already too late. The installation, which she had started calling the Sentinel, had chosen her, forming a neural connection that filled her dreams with star maps and battle strategies from a war fought before humans had mastered fire. "You need to let me back in there," she argued, watching through the research station's windows as soldiers established a perimeter around the Sentinel. Floodlights cut through the perpetual Arctic night, reflecting off the installation's metallic surface. "It's trying to tell us something important." "Absolutely not." Dr. Chen hadn't stopped pacing since the military commandeered their station. "That thing did something to your brain, Sarah. The medical team still can't explain those new neural patterns they found, because they're not looking at them the right way." Sarah grabbed a tablet and quickly sketched a complex pattern. "The Sentinel doesn't think in linear pathways like we do. It processes information in quantum superpositions. What looks like chaos to our instruments is actually a perfectly ordered system." Her mother stared at the sketch. "How do you know that?" "Because I can feel it." Sarah tapped her temple. "The connection goes both ways. It's not just feeding me information. It's learning from me too. Learning about us." Before Dr. Chen could respond, the station's door hissed open. Colonel Astrid Larsen strode in, still brushing snow from her uniform. The Norwegian officer had been surprisingly receptive to Sarah's explanation of events, though that didn't stop her from treating the Sentinel as a potential threat. "The containment team reports unusual energy readings," Larsen announced. "Whatever that thing is, it's powering up." Sarah jumped to her feet. "It's not powering up, it's trying to connect to the others." "Others?" "The network." Sarah pulled up the holographic map she'd memorized. "There are hundreds of Sentinels buried across Earth. This one is just the first to wake up because—" She hesitated. "Because what?" Larsen pressed. "Because we're running out of time." Sarah met the colonel's gaze. "The harvesters are coming. That's what destroyed the Sentinel's creators, the architects. They move from galaxy to galaxy, consuming civilizations, taking their technology and knowledge before moving on. They hit the architects 10 million years ago. Now they're heading for us. The room fell silent. Dr. Chen grabbed her daughter's hand. Sarah, honey, how can you be sure? Because the sentinel showed me. Sarah squeezed her mother's hand back. The architects knew they couldn't stop the harvesters, but they could prepare other civilizations to face them. They seeded promising worlds with their defense network, programmed to activate when those civilizations reached a certain level of development. And we've reached that level? Larson asked skeptically. No, Sarah smiled grimly. We've exceeded it. The architects never imagined a species could advance so quickly. We went from horse-drawn carriages to space flight in less than a century. Our neural plasticity, our ability to adapt and innovate, it's unprecedented. That's why it chose you, Dr. Chen whispered. A young mind, still developing, able to form new neural pathways. To bridge the gap between human and architect technology, Sarah finished. But I can't do it alone. The Sentinel network needs to be fully activated before the harvesters arrive. And for that, we need help. As if responding to her words, the tablet in her hands lit up with new data. Sarah gasped as fresh information flooded her enhanced neural pathways. They're coming faster than we thought. The harvesters, they've detected the Sentinel's activation. We have months, not years. Larson straightened. I'll contact NATO immediately. This is no longer just a Norwegian matter. It was never just a Norwegian matter, Sarah said quietly. The architects didn't build this network to protect countries. They built it to protect planets. She turned to her mother. We need to show them, all of them, what humanity is really capable of. Dr. Chen studied her daughter's face, the same determined expression she'd worn as a toddler learning to read, as a child building her first circuit board, as a young scientist making her first discovery. How do we start? Sarah walked to the window, placing her hand against the cold glass. In the distance, the Sentinel pulsed with copper light, calling to its siblings buried beneath Earth's surface. We start by trusting each other. Not just humans trusting humans, but humans trusting the legacy of a civilization that believed in us before we even existed. She turned back to the room. The architects chose Earth for a reason. They saw something in our stellar neighborhood, in our planet's composition, in the very chemistry that would eventually lead to us. They saw potential. And now, 10 million years later, we're going to prove them right. The tablet chimed again, displaying a cascade of activation signals. Across the planet, more sentinels were stirring, responding to the first awakening. Sarah felt each one through her neural link. In the depths of the Pacific, beneath the sands of the Sahara, under the ice of Antarctica, Earth's defensive grid was coming online. But it was only the beginning. Colonel, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to propose, I need you to arrange a meeting. Not just with NATO, but with every major world power. Because what I have to show them will change everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. The colonel nodded slowly, already reaching for her secure phone. Dr. Chen moved to stand beside her daughter, both of them watching the sentinel pulse against the Arctic night. Sarah felt her mother's scientific curiosity warring with parental concern. Mom, she said softly, I know you're worried, but this is bigger than us. The architects trusted humanity with their legacy. Now humanity has to trust me. In the distance, the Sentinel's glow intensified, its ancient systems fully awakening to the challenge ahead. Humanity's greatest test was approaching, and its first defender was a 13-year-old girl who had dared to answer when the stars called. The neural bridge in Sarah's mind hummed with possibilities, with knowledge waiting to be understood, with technologies waiting to be mastered. But most importantly, it hummed with hope, not just for humanity's survival, but for its ascension to something greater than even the architects had dreamed possible. The real question was, would the world's leaders be ready to listen? The United Nations General Assembly had never been this quiet. Sarah stood before the world's leaders, her neural link to the Sentinel network projecting a massive hologram of the approaching Harvester fleet. 3 months had passed since the first awakening, and every day brought new revelations and new dangers. As you can see, Sarah gestured to the hostile armada. The Harvesters have accelerated their approach. They'll reach our solar system in approximately 4 months. She paused, letting that sink in. But that's not why I've asked to speak to you today. With a thought, she changed the hologram to show Earth, now dotted with hundreds of glowing points marking activated sentinels. We've awakened 90% of the network, but we've only scratched the surface of what it can do. The architects didn't just leave us weapons. They left us their understanding of the universe itself. The Chinese representative leaned forward. You speak of technological advances. What kind? Everything. Sarah expanded the hologram, showing schematics that made the world's leading scientists gasp. Clean energy that could power cities for centuries. Medical technologies that could cure most diseases. Gravity manipulation. Faster than light travel. She met the representative's gaze. But there's a catch. The U.S. president spoke up. There's always a catch. The technology is useless without cooperation. Sarah brought up a new diagram. A complex web of interconnected nodes. The Sentinel network wasn't designed to be controlled by individual nations. It operates as a single organism, just like the architects believe humanity would eventually become, a unified species reaching for the stars. Murmurs filled the chamber. Sarah felt their resistance through her enhanced perception. Decades of distrust and competition wouldn't disappear overnight. But they didn't have decades. They barely had months. Perhaps, the Russian delegate began, certain nations could take primary responsibility for. That's exactly what the Harvesters want. Sarah interrupted. Her bluntness shocked the assembly. A 13-year-old cutting off a world leader. But she pressed on. They don't just destroy civilizations. They study them first. They look for weaknesses. And humanity's greatest weakness is our division. She brought up historical images from the Sentinel's database. The architects faced the same problem. Their world was divided when the Harvesters came. They spent precious time arguing about who would control their defenses, who would make decisions, who would lead. Her voice grew quiet. By the time they unified, it was too late. Dr. Chen stepped forward from where she'd been watching. In the months since the discovery, she'd become humanity's leading expert on architect technology, working alongside her daughter to understand their legacy. We've confirmed that the Harvester fleet has already begun its preliminary scans of our system, she reported. They're seeing everything. Our satellites, our weapons, our divided military commands. But more importantly, they're seeing our potential. Sarah nodded. The architects chose Earth for a reason. They saw what we could become. But right now, the Harvesters see only what we are. Fragmented, distrustful, fighting over resources while the real threat approaches. The Secretary General cleared his throat. What exactly are you proposing, Miss Chen? Sarah squared her shoulders. A unified Earth Defense Command. Not controlled by any one nation, but staffed by the best minds from every country. The Sentinel network has already chosen them. Scientists, strategists, innovators who can help unlock its full potential. She projected a new list of names, thousands of them, from every corner of the globe. These people have the neural compatibility to interface with architect technology. Some are world-famous researchers. Others are students, artists, gamers, people whose minds work in ways that align with architect systems. You expect us to hand over control of this alien technology to children and video game players. The French representative scoffed. No. Sarah's voice hardened. I expect you to recognize that humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons or our armies. It's our diversity of thought. The architects knew this. The Harvesters fear it. She changed the hologram one final time, showing Earth as the architects had seen it millions of years ago. A world of potential, waiting to evolve something unprecedented in the galaxy. a species that could go from stone tools to spaceflight in the blink of cosmic time. We have 4 months to prove that humanity deserves the trust the architects placed in us. Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting every leader's eyes. 4 months to turn our greatest weakness into our greatest strength. 4 months to show the harvesters that they made a mistake coming here. The chamber erupted in discussion, but Sarah already felt the shift through her neural link. The Sentinel network was responding to heightened human brain activity across the globe as the news spread. People everywhere were beginning to understand the truth. Earth had been chosen for a reason. As the leaders debated, Dr. Chen pulled her daughter aside. "They're afraid," she whispered. "Good." Sarah watched the hologram of the approaching harvesters. Fear can unite us. Fear can make us innovate. And right now, we need both. A signal pulsed through her neural link. Another sentinel activating, this one deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. With it came new information, new technologies waiting to be understood. But more importantly, it carried the same message all the sentinels shared. A civilization's greatest moment comes not when it feels ready for a challenge, but when it rises to face one it never expected. Humanity's moment had arrived. The only question was, would they rise together or fall apart? Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Sarah stood in what the Unified Earth Defense Command was calling Hub 1, a massive architect facility that had lain dormant for millions of years. Holographic displays filled the ancient chamber, tracking the progress of humanity's preparations. 2 months had passed since the UN meeting, and Earth had changed more in that time than in the previous century. Status report. Admiral Helena Santos, the newly appointed commander of Earth's unified forces, called out. Sarah closed her eyes, accessing the Sentinel network. Orbital defense grid at 70% capacity. Planetary shield generators online but untested. The lunar base. She hesitated. We're still having problems with the gravity wells. Time's running out, Santos muttered. The harvesters will be here in 8 weeks. Actually, Sarah opened her eyes. That's why I called this meeting. They'll be here sooner, much sooner. The Admiral's face paled. How much sooner? Before Sarah could answer, the facility's deep space sensors triggered an alarm. Dr. Chen rushed to a console, her fingers flying over the architect interface she'd learned to operate. Multiple objects dropping out of FTL at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. They're not harvesters. The main hologram shifted to show a fleet of ships emerging from faster-than-light travel. Their design was familiar. Sarah had seen them in the Sentinel's historical records. They're architect vessels, she breathed. A hidden fleet. Admiral Santos stepped closer to the hologram. I thought the architects were extinct. They are. Sarah's neural link filled with new information as the ships approached. These are automated vessels, waiting in deep space for millions of years. The Sentinel network must have summoned them when it detected the harvester approach. Dr. Chen's console chimed. They're transmitting data. Sarah, can you access it? Sarah nodded, letting the flood of information flow through her enhanced neural pathways. Her eyes widened. It's not just ships. The architects left us their tactical database. Records of every encounter with the harvesters, every strategy tried, every weakness found. And, Santos pressed, and we've been thinking about this all wrong. Sarah brought up a new display showing the harvester fleet. We've been preparing for a conventional war, but the harvesters don't fight that way. They're not just coming to destroy us. They're coming to study us, to learn why the architects chose Earth. The Admiral frowned. How does that help us? Because, Sarah smiled, we can show them exactly what they want to see. She turned to her mother. Mom, remember what you always say about scientific observation. Dr. Chen's eyes lit up with understanding. The act of observation changes the thing being observed. Exactly. Sarah's fingers danced over the holographic controls, bringing up a new tactical display. The harvesters are going to scan our planet, study our responses, analyze our capabilities. So let's give them something to analyze. She expanded the display to show Earth's defense network. We've been trying to hide our preparations, but what if we did the opposite? What if we showed them exactly how fast humans can learn, how quickly we can adapt? Make them face the thing they fear most. Which is? Santos asked. A species that evolves faster than they can predict. Sarah gestured to the approaching architect fleet. That's why these ships were waiting out there. Not to fight for us, but to help us fight in ways the harvesters have never seen before. The facility hummed with increased power as Sarah interfaced more deeply with the network. The architects didn't just leave us weapons. They left us a stage, a way to demonstrate humanity's potential in terms the harvesters would understand and fear. Dr. Chen studied the tactical displays. You're talking about psychological warfare against an alien species we barely understand. No, Sarah corrected. I'm talking about teaching them why you don't threaten a species that went from radio waves to quantum computing in less than a century. Why you don't attack a planet that turned the discovery of nuclear weapons into a source of civilian power. Why you don't underestimate humans who look at the impossible and say, let's try anyway. Admiral Santos straightened. What do you need? Everything. Sarah's eyes gleamed with reflected starlight from the holographic displays. Every scientist, every strategist, every gamer who's ever thought outside the box. We're going to take every piece of architect technology and use it in ways even they never imagined. The facility's systems pulsed with energy as the hidden fleet moved closer, ready to sync with Earth's defenses. Through her neural link, Sarah felt thousands of minds connecting to the network, the chosen ones from around the world, their diverse perspectives merging with ancient alien knowledge to create something entirely new. The harvesters are coming to study humanity, she said, watching the tactical displays shift and evolve as new ideas flowed through the network. Let's give them the lesson of their lives. Dr. Chen placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. And if they don't learn? Sarah's expression hardened. Then we'll teach them why the architects chose us as their successors. Not because we were ready for their technology, but because we would never stop trying to understand it, improve it, make it our own. The hidden fleet entered the solar system proper, its ancient ships awakening to their final purpose, not to fight humanity's battles, but to witness what happens when the galaxy's greatest predators mistake humanity's fractious nature for weakness, only to discover that division and debate were the forge that had made humans the most adaptable species in known space. The real war was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the cosmos exactly what human really meant. In the end, the harvesters arrived at dawn. Their fleet darkened the skies over every major city on Earth, massive organic mechanical ships that blotted out the sun. They came exactly as the architect records had shown, a display of overwhelming force meant to trigger immediate surrender. But Earth was waiting. From Hub 1, Sarah watched through thousands of feeds simultaneously, her neural link connecting her to every aspect of humanity's defense network. Beside her, Dr. Chen and Admiral Santos coordinated with command centers worldwide. They're scanning us, Sarah announced, feeling the invasive probes through the Sentinel network. Analyzing our capabilities, our responses, She stopped, smiling. They're confused. Why? Santos asked. Because we're not afraid. Sarah brought up a tactical display showing human activity across the globe. Look at their scan patterns. They're trying to understand why a pre-FTL civilization facing extinction is celebrating. It was true. In every city beneath the harvester ships, humans had gathered in streets and squares. Musicians played. Children flew kites. Street vendors sold food. It was perhaps the most uniquely human response to an apocalyptic threat, turning it into a party. Psychological warfare, Dr. Chen murmured, making them question everything they think they know about us. The first communication from the harvesters came as a global broadcast, translated simultaneously by the Sentinel network. A harsh, grating voice filled the air. Your world has been chosen for harvest. Surrender your technology and knowledge. Resistance will result in HFY. Sarah stepped forward, letting the neural link carry her response to every screen, speaker, and device on Earth. Actually, she said, her voice steady, we've been expecting you. The architects said you might visit. The silence that followed was deafening. Through her link, Sarah felt the harvester's confusion turn to concern. Their scans intensified, finally detecting the sentinel network that humans had deliberately stopped trying to hide. She sensed their growing agitation as they recognized the architect technology, and realized how thoroughly humanity had mastered it. Impossible, the harvester voice returned. This world weighs primitive, divided, vulnerable. Oh, we're still divided, Sarah agreed cheerfully. We argue about everything. Music, food, sports, politics. It's kind of our thing. She gestured, and holographic displays sprang to life above every city, showing humanity's achievements. But here's what you don't understand. Our division isn't weakness. It's the source of our strength. With another gesture, she activated Earth's defense grid. The hidden architect fleet emerged from cloak, but they weren't alone. Alongside them flew human vessels, hybrid craft that combined architect technology with human innovation in ways the original builders had never imagined. You see, Sarah continued, when humans disagree, we don't just fight. We compete. We debate. We look for new solutions. And sometimes we find answers that no one else would have thought of. She paused. Want to see what humans can do with architect technology when we really get creative. The harvester ships shifted formation, weapons charging, but Sarah was already moving to the next phase of the plan. At her command, the orbital defense platforms activated, not firing weapons, but instead launching thousands of small objects toward the harvester fleet. What are those? Santos asked. Sarah grinned. Video game consoles. Specifically, the controllers from Earth's most popular virtual reality systems, modified with architect tech. Through the neural link, she connected to the gamers who had trained for this moment. Turns out all those hours people spent playing space combat games weren't wasted time after all. Across the planet, thousands of gamers, from professional esports champions to casual players, found their familiar controllers linking them to real spacecraft. The architect ships responded to their commands with the same intuitive feedback they'd mastered in countless virtual battles. The harvesters fired their first shot, a city-killing beam aimed at New York. But it never reached the ground. Instead, it met something the architects had never managed to create, a shield that didn't just block energy, but redirected it. That's from Dr. Patel in Mumbai, Sarah explained. She combined architect shield technology with her research into quantum entanglement. Cool, right? The harvester voice returned, now tinged with something that might have been fear. What are you? We're human, Sarah answered simply. We're what happens when you give a species that went from horses to helicopters in one lifetime access to technology that's millions of years old. We're what happens when you take the most argumentative, creative, stubborn beings in the galaxy and tell them something's impossible. She felt the harvester fleet's weapons powering up for a full attack. But humanity was ready. The hybrid fleet moved with impossible precision, guided by gamers who had spent years mastering virtual combat. Earth's redirected shields turned every harvester shot into fuel for their own defenses. And through it all, people kept celebrating in the streets, their defiance a weapon more potent than any beam or missile. The architects chose us, Sarah continued, not because we were perfect, but because we never stopped trying to be better. They saw what you fear most, a species that thrives on challenge, that turns division into innovation, that looks at ancient alien technology and says, nice start, but what if we tried this instead? The harvester fleet began to retreat, their carefully planned harvest disrupted by something they'd never encountered. A prey species that had been waiting for them, that had taken the architect's legacy, and transformed it into something new. "You can run," Sarah called after them, her voice carried across the void by architect communications arrays. "Tell the others what you found here. Tell them about the humans, the argumentative, innovative, impossible humans who turned your harvest into a block party. Tell them why the architects chose us as their successors." As the harvester fleet flooded into FTL, cheers erupted across the planet. But Sarah wasn't done. Through her neural link, she sent a final message, this one coded in mathematics the harvesters couldn't ignore. "And if you ever come back, just remember, by then, we'll have improved everything you've seen today." Because that's what humans do. We never stop learning, never stop arguing about better ways to do things, and never, ever accept limitations. Admiral Santos placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "They'll be back." "Of course they will." Sarah watched the hybrid fleet take up defensive positions around Earth, crewed by gamers and scientists and dreamers from every nation. "And next time, we'll show them something even better." Dr. Chen hugged her daughter. "The architects would be proud." "No," Sarah corrected, feeling the joy and determination of billions of humans through her neural link. "They would be surprised. And that's exactly why they chose us." Above them, Earth's first unified defense force settled into its new role, protecting a planet that had proved something extraordinary to the galaxy. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon isn't the most advanced technology, but the species that never stops trying to understand it, improve it, and use it in ways its creators never imagined. The harvesters had come to study humanity. Instead, they'd learned why you don't threaten a species that turns first contact into a teaching moment and a party. It was perhaps the most human victory in history.